From the land of conjurers, flying through the internet to your device like a UAP, hauntingly unexplained and downright weird. This is the witching hours, and we're ready to take off in the flash of an eye. Good evening to one and all, wherever and whenever you are listening to this program. I am not Frosty. I am medium Jenny Lee, and this is Allison, the priestess of Wonderland.
Hello.
Frosty's having some major technical difficulties today. We don't know what's happening, so he may or may not be joining us tonight. He is backstage kind of helping to run things, but a lot of things just seem to be quite a mess today. So, yeah. The Witching Hours is on the Spirit Realm Network. I think it's on there. It's supposed to be on there right now. Now you can find us and watch this program on the Spirit Realm Network showing on the Roku app. So the Spirit Realm Network has a Roku app. If you have not heard that news, download it so you can watch all of our programming. It's always helpful if you can leave a review, a thumbs up, wherever you listen to our show. It helps others find us so we can grow Team Weird. And speaking of Team Weird, we have the Team Weird takeover happening very soon now because it's May already, and happy May the 4th be with you. Our guest has a lovely Star Wars shirt on today, by the way. Team Weird takeover is happening at the Lord Baltimore Hotel in Baltimore, Maryland on June 27th and 28th. Very quickly. We have a lot of amazing guests that will be there. We won't go through all them all right now. Tickets are only $60. You can get them at thewitchinghourspodcast.com. Click on the merch button, and it'll take you to get your ticket. Allison, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm here.
We made it.
I'm here. That's about all I can manage at this point. Are you ready for some weird news?
Always ready for weird news.
Frosty, are you ready for weird news? In a world of dull mass production, there's still a place where tradition comes alive. At Vincent's Forge, every piece is forged by hand. Each piece is unique, durable, and built to last, and each creation carries the mark of true craftsmanship and care. Own something forged by fire, wear something that tells a story. Vincent's Forge, handcrafted, forged to last. Weird News is brought to you by Vincent's Forge. Go check them out on Etsy shop, Vincent's Forge.
Do we have more Team Weird pendants coming?
I believe so. They're trying to get a head count on to see who else might want to buy one because there was only one left.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Our Team Weird pendants. All right, the weird news tonight. Congresswoman promises to show things of non-human origin. Oh, here we go with Luna again. Representative Anna Paulina Luna is back in the news. She has promised to hold a press conference addressing what she described as materials or information of non-human origin. Quotations. Oh, my dad just posted, there are no Team Weird pendants left.
Oh.
So my brothers have to get on making some more of them. A move that comes as pressures mount on the Pentagon from Kid Rock, maybe, over delayed releases of unidentified anomalous phenomena or UAP footage. Luna, a Florida Republican who chairs the House Oversight Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets, that is way too long of a title, has been among the most vocal lawmakers demanding greater transparency from the department. At this point, no, Department of Defense regarding unexplained aerial encounters.
I thought it's not the Department of Defense anymore.
It's a Department of War. Oh yeah, also known as the Department of War.
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, it is in the news.
Department of War.
I mean, her remarks follow a Pentagon update acknowledging delays in releasing dozens of UAP videos, which they keep talking about releasing them, and they aren't coming. Sought by lawmakers, including footage of U.S. military personnel. Her comments were aired Wednesday during an episode of the Pod Force One podcast hosted by Miranda Devine. The quote from the podcast is, "I've seen evidence in an SCIF that leads me to believe there are things we cannot explain. I have observed things that are of non-human origin and creation. That's my opinion." And she's sticking to it. Thanks, Luna, for sticking to it. I don't know, Allison. What do you think? You think they're ever gonna just let us know things?
They're like dangling it like a carrot.
Yes. This is an excellent news story for our guests this evening. Story number 2, CIA's mind control program in turmoil after scientists' mysterious death. CIA, I'm trying to read it, but I'm not processing what it says. CIA's mind control program is in turmoil. Well, what a shame. A congressional hearing to examine the CIA's secretive mind control program has been set for this month. Goodness gracious almighty. Oh, here comes Luna again. All right, Luna. Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna announced on Wednesday that the task force on the same thing, her long title, will hold a hearing on the Cold War era. Oh, the Cold War era. So it's not really happening right now. It's how it was happening back in the Cold War era, the MK Ultra program on May 13th.
Oh.
Just supposedly it was conducted between 1953 and 1964, aimed to develop procedures and drugs for interrogations, weakening individuals, and forcing confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. Fun times.
So they're releasing those files?
Oh, goodness. They're doing a hearing on it.
Oh.
Yeah. Representative Luna is calling for a hearing on that too. She's causing all kinds of trouble. She pushed to restart the congressional hearings on the matter in February, citing a Daily Mail article that reported a newly surfaced document on mind control experiments had been placed in the CIA's reading room the year before. This is a long story. The renewed focus has placed the CIA's MK Ultra program back under the microscope because of its drugs, hypnosis, psychological testing on humans, as well as the death of one of its scientists. Oh, Frosty, here he's coming. Are you coming?
Can I sit next to him?
Yeah, you can sit next to me. Oh, he's coming.
Oh, you guys can sit next to each other.
That's to unplug the headphones.
All right.
He's not happy with my reading of the news, apparently.
We got to send a pro in here. I don't know what No, I just wanted to get all the other stuff done because my computer went on the absolute fritz. And on top of that, we weren't streaming on the Spirit Realm Network because that's not working.
No.
So our stream wasn't going up, but that's all fixed.
Everything's fixed.
I could fix my computer probably, but then I would have to not be able to control anything. So I'll just come in here and sit with you tonight if that's okay.
Thanks, Allison, for that suggestion.
All right, keep going with the news.
You finished.
I can't read it because of the arm.
Dr. Frank Olson, a biological warfare scientist, was covertly dosed with LSD at a meeting and died 9 days later. I don't know why I'm laughing about that. Good Lord. After falling out of his hotel room in New York, which was declared a suicide, although some people, including family members, believe he was murdered. Good Lord. I think I remember hearing about that. Yeah. A total of 144 projects were carried out under MK Ultra during that period, highlighting the vast scale of the CIA's secret experimentation program. While most documents were destroyed in 1973, you don't say, a new 1975 investigation led by Senator Frank Church exposed the existence of the MK Ultra program. Investigation sparked widespread panic, outrage, and criticism of the CIA's practices, as it should. It also led to the creation of permanent congressional oversight committees for intelligence agencies.
So there we go. Just like the congressional agencies we have that are dealing with the UFOs right now.
But it really doesn't do much of nothing.
Story number 3, Goldie Hawn gives new details about a meeting silver triangle-headed aliens appearing on Jimmy Kimmel Live. The Hollywood star came close to tears as she recalled the silver creatures with triangular-shaped heads. I suddenly remembered they touched my face, said the Oscar winner, who always believed she was destined to make contact with the third kind. They touched my face, and I felt like the finger of God. It was the most benevolent, loving feeling. This was powerful. It was filled with light. Becoming emotional, Hawn revealed how the encounter happened in the 1960s when she was working as a dancer in California and living in a small apartment. She recalled, I looked up into the sky and I said, I know you're up there and I know we're not alone and I want to meet you one day. Fast forward to 4 months later, the aliens came to her, 2 to 3 creatures, exhausted from dance rehearsals in West Covina. Hawn had asked a friend if she could take a nap in his car. Moments after she closed her eyes, she experienced something she still struggles to fully comprehend to this day. I heard a high-pitched sound in my ear, and I remember looking at my hand and my body, and I couldn't move anything. I was completely paralyzed looking out of the car window. Hawn claimed to have witnessed the aliens observing her. 2 people looking at me with triangular-shaped heads, sort of silver-colored, she said, adding that they appeared to communicate through sound rather than speech.
Telepathy.
Yep.
You know,
so what do you think?
I always kind of like Goldie Hawn.
Yeah. I mean, another sighting. Of course, I don't. Celebrity sighting is no different than anybody else's sighting, but it was, on the airwaves, so to speak. So
yeah, she was talking about it on Jimmy Kimmel.
So more and more seems to be coming out, which I'm sure we can talk about a little bit tonight. And then finally, the judge dismisses a lawsuit blocking the sale of the Conjuring house. The high-profile lawsuit in an attempt to block the sale of the Conjuring house to Ghost Hunters TV star Jason Hawes has been dismissed. The lawsuit was filed last year by the older sister of the home's owner. She argued that her sister was legally incompetent and not of sound mind when she signed over the rights to Hawes' associate, Julia DeMay, to sell the Round Top home for at least $1.3 million. Rhode Island Superior Court Judge Shannon Signor determined Wednesday that Greenhall lacked the legal standing to file a lawsuit on her sister's behalf. She noted that only a court-appointed guardian could do so. Hawes said the dismissal clears a path forward for him to purchase the famous farmhouse. So, as far as we can tell, the Conjuring house is going to belong to Jason Hawes and supposedly open to the paranormal community that did the Kickstarter and the GoFundMe or whatever to be able to purchase it. So we'll see what happens.
A lot of paranormal people are buying up those paranormal locations.
And that was the weird news.
That was a weird news. All right. Tonight we have the Priestess of Wonderland, clearly, because she's been here the whole time, to give us the moon update for May. Please tell us there's some good news, Allison.
Well, May doesn't look as crazy as the last few months. We still have like a little bit more craziness to happen this month, but June and July are like looking really good. So May is kind of like in between. But the exciting thing that we have happening this month is we have a blue moon this month, which means that we have 2 full moons within the month of May. So we had our full moon in Scorpio on the 1st, and then on the 31st, we're going to have our full moon in Sagittarius at the end of the month. So 2 full moons this month.
The blue moon.
The full moon in Scorpio happened last week, and the full moon in Scorpio was paired with the Aries new moon, which is like part of the weird wheel shift this year, or this year and a half, I guess. So like Aries and Scorpio energy is very intense. Like Aries is the burst of spring and Scorpio is that transition into fall. Like where everything's dying and releasing and letting go. So it was a lot of like kind of different energies
Yeah,
happening
it's a
all at
weird
once.
combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is and then in the background of that, we're having the sun season be different as well. Normally we have a new moon and in the sun season, like we normally have an Aries new moon when the sun is in Aries as well. Like that's usually what kicks off the moon cycle. But because the wheel is so shifted, we had this background of Taurus energy. So we're starting off May with Taurus sun season. So that's kind of like grounding us. Like in the beginning of spring, it was all this Aries and all this fire, and Taurus and Earth comes in after that to like ground things, settle things
Thank
down.
goodness, because it was a little much.
I know. And it still kind of is. And so like the first half of May, we have Taurus sun season, and the second half of May, we have Gemini sun season. So the whole point of Taurus season is to get grounded and stable, especially because things were like very shook up in April and in March and February and January also. So I just really love Taurus season because it helps you come back to the ground. It helps you come back to your comfort zone and your safe space. And if you don't have that, to like build it. So for the first half of May is really, I think, encouraging us to like build this place, this nest, or find some people in your life that recharge you or ground you or keep you stable, like that we're trying to build this new foundation. And then the second half of May is that Gemini energy that is really, I think, opening up conversations and showing us the other side of things, showing us the duality, which I think is really significant because the big thing that happened last month was Uranus moving into Gemini, which really shakes things up. It like Uranus is the planet of liberation and freedom. So it's meant to shake things up. It was in Taurus before, which literally shook the foundations that our society is built on. So now it moving into Gemini can help us have the conversations about how are we going to rebuild this? How are we going to fix this? How are we going to change this?
That all seems like well planned out.
It kind of does. Even though the wheel is kind of wonky, I mean, these cycles are set into place for a reason. So this first week we had that full moon in Scorpio, which was very intense energy, but Mercury is moving into Taurus. The sun moved into Taurus. Like Mars is going to move into Taurus this month. So we have these grounding energies. So Mars in Taurus is taking one slow action, like slow and steady wins the race. Mercury in Taurus is about like making, like using the right words, making sure you're thinking about what you're saying before you say it. And Gemini again is opening up those conversations so that we can say it. Okay, we're already at May 4th. So the big thing that's happening this month is Pluto is going retrograde, but really I think that gives us an opportunity to kind of pause. We've had so many things shake up. Pluto's the planet of transformation. We're in the middle of this evolution and this shift and this change. When Pluto goes retrograde, it gives us an opportunity to kind of like let things settle a little bit and just kind of figure out like where do we want to go next. And it's going to be retrograde until October. So it's like these are really long transitions and long shifts. So when Pluto goes retrograde, I just feel like it gives us this opportunity to just rethink and relearn and integrate and understand the transitions that we're making or the changes that we're making in our life. So in the middle of the month, we're going to have our Taurus new moon at the end of Taurus season. So hopefully you're like the foundations and the stability that you put into place the first half of the month and during Taurus sun season, you're like solidifying them on the new moon, because the new moon, we want to start things. We want to begin things and start to make those changes that we want to happen. So having the new moon in Taurus at the end of Taurus season helps you just kind of like define, like, okay, this is what I'm doing, like set in stone. These are the changes that I'm going to make, or this is the progress that I want to make, or whatever. And then the sun will move into Gemini right after that. So Gemini shows, hopefully we have this foundation, and then Gemini helps us to have the conversation about what are the changes we want to make? How do we want to say this? And then again, slowly the other planets, Mercury, Mars, are going to move into Gemini also. So Mercury and Gemini, I think, helps us understand the other side of the conversation. And with Uranus also there in Gemini, I feel like it helps you just figure out what are your, like, defining your transformation, defining your liberation. It feels like making the picket sign. Like, what is your picket line slogan? Like, what is the thing that you're standing up for? What is the thing that you want to proclaim to the world? So Mercury and Gemini, Uranus and Gemini coming together, I think, can really just help us understand, like, what is it that we need to say? How can we say it? And what is, like, the perfect way to say it? Like, if you could put just one phrase on a sign, what is it that you're standing up for? What is it that you are moving towards? Or even just solidifying your dreams and your goals and your ideas, like speaking them out loud or speaking them to yourself. And then at the
gives us some goals to think of for the month. Be thinking of your goals.
Yeah, I mean, Gemini just helps us use our words, and words are spells. So proclaiming them, I think, is really important to do, especially during Gemini season. And while Uranus is in Gemini also. So at the end of the month, the sun and Uranus comes together again. I think that helps us to, like, really define, like, what kind of actions do we want to take to move forward? How are we going to move the evolution forward? How are we going to move the revolution forward? And then at the very end of the month, the full moon in Sagittarius is kind of like a big party moon, because Sagittarius season is that holiday season at the end of the year. So it's putting a spotlight on what are your accomplishments? What do you want to celebrate? And Sagittarius full moon usually comes like about halfway through the year, which is crazy to say that we're halfway through the year already. So a full moon in Sagittarius is kind of highlighting. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it just kind of highlights your goals and or what you've accomplished so far this year. And really, it's a celebration that we've all survived this year so far, I think.
So far, yes.
And then more stuff happens in Leo in June and July. So there's going to be more big fire energy in the middle of the summer.
Okay. Well, May just seems like a get your stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out
like
what
a
you
regroup.
do. Yeah, regrouping. That sounds good.
And you're sure that Mercury isn't in retrograde right now?
I checked right before we started stream, because that's not happening until June. I think it's either June or July. I can't remember.
So it's just Gemini in retrograde right now, I guess.
It's just this Gemini. All right, Allison, thank you so much for coming on and helping me co-host the beginning there.
Yeah, no problem.
For my terrible weird news reading. I appreciate everything you always do for us. Thanks. All right. Goodbye, Allison.
Bye.
All right.
James Krug serves as the planetarium director of the Neil Armstrong Planetarium in Altoona, Pennsylvania. He co-founded the Space Race Museum, containing valuable artifacts from the U.S. and Soviet space programs, and founded the Mount Lion Observatory at nearby Fort Roberto historic site. I'll have to make sure I'm right on that one. Krug also hosts public programs at the planetarium and the observatory throughout the year, as well as birthday parties, scouting groups, and a 9-week adult evening classes focusing on astronomy, conspiracies, and extraterrestrial life at the planetarium. Krug has been the MUFON field investigator since 2015 and a Pennsylvania State Section Director For the past 5 years, he is a frequent presenter at the PA MUFON state conferences and has appeared on UFOs over Pittsburgh, Aquarian Radio, the Chris DiPerno Show, the Kevin Moore Show, and the Pennsylvania UFO documentary by Maynard Films. Krug has been published in Phenomena magazine and is a frequent guest on the Eric McKenna Project and co-hosts the Majestic Ears Only podcast available on iTunes and Google Play, and lives in Altoona. Please welcome to the show, James Krug.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being on and dealing with all of our
Dealing with our
puddles
madness.
and craziness. Holy moly.
No, I love the vibe so far. Listening from the waiting room, this sounds great. And just watching your intro, you've had some pretty well-known people on the show. Did you have Michael Schratt on from the History
Yes,
Channel
sir.
one time?
We have twice.
That's pretty awesome. One time, he and I almost got into like a fight in a little bookstore booth at the MUFON International Symposium.
No way.
Yeah, it was crazy. Do you want to hear that story real quick?
Absolutely.
So 2 out of the past 3 years, I've been invited to speak at the MUFON International Symposium in Cincinnati. And so I drove out both times. It's a pretty long drive from Central PA, but it's like such an honor to do it. You don't want to turn it down. And I got there last year and it was like the first night. So there weren't a lot of people there yet. It was basically like the big wigs at MUFON, field investigators, state people were there. And I'm kind of just like walking through the lobby as they're setting everything up. And this one lady had this really nice paranormal UFO bookstore. And a lot of times at these bookstores, they're selling like classic UFO books. And those are the ones I always like to hit up first, because a lot of these books, they could be really, really valuable, but they're just basically selling them to try to pass them on for like the good of ufology. And so I get there first, like I'm looking by myself, and then who walks in from Hangar 1, the UFO Files? Michael Schratt. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's definitely Michael Schratt. And I've met him before. He was like a really nice guy. Well, he comes over and he starts to look at the books, and the lady's like setting up and she's totally trusting us. She's like, hey, you can just like go back behind my table. You can look at anything back there. Now to set this up, like I've got the inside leverage. I'm there first. I'm like in position. And so Michael Schratt's like, making small talk with me. He's nice, but you can tell he's super into these books and competitive. Well, doesn't he just kind of like pull a shoulder move and he like cuts off the inside and he cuts right around me and he's getting to the really good books first. And like, I can't do anything about it now. Like we're both adults. I can't like grab him by like the scruff of the suit and pull him out of there. Like this guy's like pretty famous. And so I'm sitting there seething because he gets out these boxes of books I didn't even see. And like, he's getting like first editions, like original, like Eric Von Däniken type books. I'm just like, oh, Schratt. And so I ended up like, I bought like, I don't know, 5 or 6 books. Schratt just went crazy. He bought like 10 or 15. He got all of the best ones. And like, even at home now, I like try to content myself reading from like the B team of these books. I'm like, this is a really good book. It's really good. And then every now and then I just kind of like pump my fist to the sky. So he's a good guy. He's definitely a good guy. I just thought that was a funny story. And like, I bet if you asked him, he wouldn't even remember it, but it totally happened exactly like I said it
He's
did.
not worried. He's not worried about it. He's the one who got all the good books.
Right?
I know. He's just living the time of his life right now, going on TV, reading the books that I was supposed to have. So if you ever have him on again, just ask him about it, just to see if he remembers anything about it.
That almost turned into like a Black Friday Christmas shopping experience. So like you guys getting in a fist fight over these books. Yeah.
I was getting major Black Friday vibes. And in a way, it was kind of nice because like Black Friday is not what it used to be. Like my wife and I will still go for fun. And we're just kind of like, like nobody's yelling. Nobody's pushing each other. Like all these deals you can get online anyway. So yes, you were exactly right, Jenny. That's exactly what it was like. It was our paranormal Black Friday.
Lou said that this sounds like the making of a villain origin story.
Oh my gosh. And that was only half the intensity, a third the intensity of one time when I almost got in a fight with from Missing 411, David Paulides. You guys know of David Paulides at all?
I was just telling Jenny this week about David Paulides, and I actually was re-listening to an old Midnight in the Desert where he was on with Art Bell.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he is. He's very good. Like I respect his research. But one time at a Western PA MUFON conference, it definitely got a little bit heated between us, and I wasn't even presenting. So I'm not sure if you want to hear that story. I'm not sure if this podcast like is just going to go with like famous people that I almost got in fights with or not.
Scraps with.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yay. Does your wife say that she can't take you anywhere? Is that a common phrase that she says?
Well, the funny thing, usually my wife doesn't accompany me on these. Like, I think she would keep me better in check. And it's funny because I'm not even like looking for disagreements. They just kind of like follow me every now and then. But overall, the conference experience has been pretty fun. I've got some good stories. I even have like a good Stanton Friedman story that I tell. Do you guys know the late great Stanton Friedman with ufology?
I do.
Yeah, one time it was at the first MUFON conference I ever presented at. It was in Pittsburgh. It was probably around 2018. And I got to open the conference and I did a presentation on a rumored secret Apollo mission after Apollo 17. It's like found footage. It's like the urban legend of Apollo 20, the secret mission. And so I called my presentation Apollo 20, Fact or Fantastic Fiction. But I was super excited because the great Stanton Friedman was actually the headline speaker. And so he was older, but he was still traveling and presenting. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I get to meet Stanton Friedman. So I actually brought one of his books with me. It was one that he co-authored with a woman named Kathleen Martin, who happens to be the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. So she's a big fixture in PA MUFOlogy. And so it was a great book. And I bought it from Kathleen and she signed it for me. But like, obviously everybody wants Stanton Friedman's signature. And so she had a bunch that were pre-signed by Stanton Friedman. And so I had this book and it was signed by Stanton Friedman and it was signed in person by Kathleen Martin. So I brought it here and I thought, this is going to be incredible. I'm going to actually have Stanton Friedman sign it in person. And so I'm waiting my place in line. I don't try to like jump line or anything like that. And so I get to the front and I kind of sheepishly like hand it over. I was like, here, Mr. Friedman, if you could sign my book, it'd be great. And he looks at it, he goes, And then he flips open the page and he goes, I already signed it. I was like, I know, sir. I was like, it was signed at Kathleen Martin's conference. I said, if you could just sign it in person, that would mean a lot to me. He goes, so you want me to sign it again? I was like, yes, sir. If you could, that'd be really great. He goes, And so he starts to sign it. And then I was like, just so you know, sir, I'm presenting first on Apollo 20. And I made these cool little like Apollo 20 buttons. And I like slid one across the table to him. I was like, here's a button for you. I hope you really enjoy my presentation. He goes, And then that was it. So I just like took my book back and like walked away. So that was my chance meeting with Stanton Friedman.
There you go. Yeah, and he was a giant of the field for sure, for people who aren't aware.
And I think really brought the field a lot of credibility. Like when you have an already established nuclear physicist, then turning UFO researcher on top of that. And it wasn't just like splash presentations and it was his persona. It was also Friedman spending hours and hours, like months and years of his life, just in different like archives in the Library of Congress, like going to libraries in different towns where things happen and tracking things down. So he was very instrumental in trying to validate the Majestic 12 documents. And I have his book called Above Top Secret Magic. And it's just absolutely meticulous in examining what fonts what typefaces they had, what the formats were back in like the 1950s and 1960s. So he was really one of the first ones, I'd say, who brought an element of clinical research to the UFO field. And so absolutely very respected till the day he died. May he rest in peace, the great Stanton Friedman.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jim, I want to welcome you to the show again. I wanted to say, I was hoping to be able to meet you at the Hanover Tavern Paracon this year, and weather got in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
All the snowstorms and stuff that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've really been interested in MUFON. Having someone on, I'm excited to talk about MUFON specifically. But also, you work at like one of my favorite places in the world to go to, which is a planetarium, which it's like two of my favorite things to talk about UFOs, and planetariums is a wonderful place to visit.
Yeah.
So I guess we can start a little bit from the beginning here. We don't have to go over everything, but kind of how did you get into the field and interest in UFOs? And I imagine that those two things were kind of related.
Yeah, thank you so much. I could go so many directions with that, Frosty. I guess I'll start with the UFO part. It started at a very, very young age. Like, I'm old enough. I grew up out in the country, and my family, we just had like an antenna. We only had a couple channels, and this is like early mid 80s. We didn't even have a VCR yet. And I remember about once a month, we would go to my next door neighbor, Bob's house. And it was a big deal because Bob actually had a VCR. And so he had a collection of movies. And I still remember as a kid, I was probably only 5 or 6 years old. We went over to Bob's house. And if you both remember, when you used a VCR or like a DVD player, it always had to be on channel 3. So prior to the movie, Bob had on PBS, and it was either Nova or it was like a PBS NewsHour. But they had a group of scientists on, and they were talking about actual photographs of UFOs. And at first, even as a little kid, I thought, okay, like they're going to start making fun of it and saying it's silly. But I was amazed because they were actually having a genuine scientific discussion about it. Nobody was making fun. And these were like classic UFO photographs that you probably know from like the 50s and 60s. And they were just genuinely talking about whether or not there were other people out there. And
which is a very rare, that's a rare thing for the 80s. Because you're right. It's like everybody, like they would talk about it like it was real. And then at the end, they would just make fun of it.
Yeah. And honestly, like that was even the case, Jenny, up until probably the last 10 years. Like prior to that, as an astronomer, it would be considered career suicide to even talk about it. And now we've seen a total paradigm shift where all astronomers all say the universe is just teeming with life, but at least so far, they're just stubbornly holding on to the idea that the stars are so far apart that it could never come here. So yeah, we've had a big paradigm shift. So that always stuck with me. And I never actually intended to be an astronomy teacher. I initially wanted to get certified to teach environmental science, but late 90s, when I was starting college in Pennsylvania, where I live, couldn't get certified to teach it. So I went to a college called Juniata College. It's in central Pennsylvania, just a little bit below Penn State. And at the time, the closest I could get was Earth and Space Science secondary education. And little Juniata only ever offered one astronomy class. Most of what I took was geology, organic chemistry, biology, oceanography, weather and climate. It was a really nice all-around mix of sciences. But I ended up doing my student teaching at the Neil Armstrong Planetarium in Altoona. It was opened in 1972, right at the peak or a little bit post-peak of the space race, the same year that Apollo 17 made the last official landing on the moon. And it had been open with the same planetarium director. My friend, his name was Regis. He was a great guy. And Regis was on his way out. He was retiring, and he just stayed one more year. And so I taught Earth and Space Science down by Harrisburg for a year. Totally loved it. But then that job opened up. And even though me with little experience, I was one of the only people in the entire part of the state that actually knew how to run the system. And so I ended up getting it. And when I first took it over in 2004, we had one of the big classic like Spitz star balls that stood up in the middle of the room. And we stuck with that for a couple of years. And then in 2005, we became one of the first 20 planetariums on Earth to go digital. And that system and it was built by a company out of Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania called Spitz. That lasted us about 17 years, and we just upgraded to our second digital system. So a lot of planetariums around the country actually closed. They were built during that time because the US government gave a lot of money to public schools, because the idea was if they could get young men and women interested in astronomy, when they became older and became taxpayers, they would support NASA and the space program. So a lot of them have closed since then, but ours has been going strong ever since 1972. I've been there ever since. This is my 23rd year at the Neil Armstrong Planetarium.
Wow.
That's great.
That's wonderful.
We actually got to go to our local planetarium somewhat recently, and we saw an exhibit there on exoplanets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was really
Ooh.
awesome.
Fascinating.
Did they have displays set up about them, or how did it work?
Well, I mean, it was like the whole, in the planetarium, and they would like show like how many exoplanets there were. It's like getting like visual concepts of it, and then discussing different exoplanets they found and like what we know scientifically about the atmospheres. And so, yeah, it was actually, it was a really good program that we went through there. So
Now, was that, just because I'm interested, Frosty, was that a full planetarium show that you watched on exoplanets, or was it the planetarium director, did he or she kind of make up their own show on the fly and they just took the audience through it?
they definitely, I think, had a program for it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. It was like a reoccurring
And that
show,
was at
yeah.
the Virginia Science Museum.
Oh, no way. I've heard of that one. That's awesome. Do they have a pretty big planetarium dome? Did it seem pretty big?
It was I don't know, a couple flights.
It's
like,
hard to compare it when
Yeah.
you haven't been to a lot of planetariums.
Yeah, totally
but
understand.
I would say it's a fairly decent size.
Yeah.
It's not huge, but it's not,
Yeah.
tiny.
Mhm.
Oh, well, that's awesome. You guys went there. I'd love to see pictures of it sometime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been going there since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
a couple other things I wanted to get into, kind of starting off tonight, was we talked about Michael Stratt a little bit at the beginning,
Yeah.
and I
Great story, by
Yeah.
the way.
Thank you.
I had talked to him about this, and going on with the news that we talked about tonight, that Jenny was all having to read
Yeah.
tonight.
The department. Yeah.
Look, there's a lot of news that's been going on over the last couple of years when it comes to UFOs, when it comes to UAPs, and all of this information that just kind of flooding out, some of which seems to have some truth behind it, some of which seems to maybe be, I don't know, misintelligence, disinformation. I don't know.
Mhm.
What should the public think right now about all the information that's coming out of Congress and these congressional hearings, in your opinion?
I think back to the saying that there's no such thing as a free lunch. A lot of people, when this stuff comes out, based on my lifelong interest, they right away come to me and say, "Hey, Jim, like, isn't this totally awesome?" But it's kind of funny. My instincts, I am very, very skeptical about it. And I think it's partly because when you get used to, for your entire adult life, the US government not only not giving you anything, but also trying their best to completely dismiss or ridicule anything remotely credible that comes out. And it's not just during my life, but I think that you could say the lid of secrecy really slammed down. Some people would say Roswell. Some people would say a couple years later, when Kentucky Air National Guard pilot Thomas Mantell ended up dying, crashing his airplane while pursuing UFO. But sometime in the late 40s into the early 50s, I think that lid really came slamming down. And so I don't dismiss any of it outright. I mean, some people could argue that so much of this is coming to a head. The United States government and other governments know they have to start releasing some of it so that they can control the narrative. Because if they don't, if they just draw a line in the sand and then it starts getting released anyway, like, for example, Canadian former Minister of Defense Paul Hellyer has been open for probably 15 years about the reality of UFOs. A couple years ago, during President Trump's first term in office, former Israel Minister of Space Defense Chaim Eshed turned whistleblower and said aliens are not only real, Israel and the United States are working with them both on Earth and on underground bases on Mars. There's a galactic federation. And so other countries are starting to leak this. So I think part of it, at least, is the United States still wanting to say we're in control of the narrative. Like, simple example, as a high school teacher, some days I can kind of tell. Usually I'm not a tyrant in class. Like, when there's about 3 minutes left, I'll tend to end class just to give my students time to like gather up their stuff, talk a little bit, relax until the bell rings. But some days I can kind of tell when there's like 4 or 5 minutes left in the class, students are pretty much done. They're starting to slack off. They're starting to put their things away. And you might wonder how I'm going to relate this. So to control the narrative, I'll basically say, okay, guys, we can end a little bit early today. Well, the reality is I could tell I was losing control of the situation as a teacher anyway, but I want to feign the idea that I'm still in control of it. And so I say that even though it's going to happen anyway. So liken that to the United States as the teacher, they can kind of see the cracks in the dam. They know that it's going to happen anyway. So this is them trying to keep control. However, I also think there's a much deeper, darker, more potentially sinister side of this, of which people absolutely have to be aware. Are either of you familiar with the idea that's called Project Bluebeam?
It's like the
Yes.
idea that they're going to have a fake.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so that idea really came about from a Canadian journalist named Sergei Monast. And if you've ever seen the movie Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson based his character on Sergei Monast. And a lot of people feel like he ended up getting offed and eliminated early for this. But in 1994, he published a book called Project Bluebeam, in which he claimed that NASA, along with help of the United Nations, the United States, as one last desperate attempt to try to control the population on Earth, when they had no other options, would essentially try to fake an alien invasion as a way, their last ditch effort to try to implement a one world government and a new world order. And it's interesting because Monast does that in the 1990s. But then where we actually heard that first was the first head of the Rocketry Center at Huntsville, Alabama, Dr. Werner von Braun, former Nazi SS turned American citizen NASA administrator. He had actually told friends, and he predicted this. He said, there are going to be 3 great threats that are going to be told to the American people to try to keep control. And so von Braun said the very first threat is going to be communism. And at the time, that really wasn't a big stretch because he was already at Huntsville during the Cold War with the Soviet Union. So you could say, well, that's not really very insightful. Von Braun just saw what was already going on. But he said the second great threat, the second way that they're going to try to scare and control people is with the threat of terrorism. And of course, we've had the war on terror ever since September 11th, and that's a whole side story, but we've absolutely had this war on terror. But then finally, von Braun said, when all else fails, they will then use the threat of aliens to try to keep control of people. So you would initially think, and a lot of my students think, that I'd be like super, super psyched about these things. And they're interesting. I follow them all, but I also take them with a grain of salt. And just the skeptical side of me after this many years is thinking, okay, why are you giving us this? What are you actually, what are you actually pushing us towards here?
Which that Disclosure movie, who put that out?
Oh, you're talking about the Elizondo?
Yes. Did you watch that? The Disclosure movie?
I didn't. I will say not a lot of UFO lifers really trust Lou Elizondo very much at all. I think his credibility is very low.
What they were doing in that video, in that movie. It was, it's like they're trying to give you the information, but they're also twisting it to make it seem like a threat. Like this is a threat to our
National security.
national security. This
Mhm.
is a threat to our world. And as a woo-woo person who has had telepathic communication with these things, that's not what's happening. And it's
Mhm.
like, if they wanted to destroy us, don't you think they would have done it a long time ago?
Mhm,
Right? Like,
mhm.
it's
Yeah.
very twisted.
I
Very
do
twisted.
think too that lifetime people who have been into UFOs, I think they're very skeptical when somebody brand new comes onto the scene out of nowhere and is immediately given this privilege, is immediately given this voice by the media and politicians. I think if the United States government was genuine about disclosure and they really wanted to do that in a way that people found credible, one of the best things to do would be to feed that information to already established UFO voices out there that people trust. So when you see somebody brand new essentially come in from the outside, like a Lou Elizondo, I think people grow skeptical because if you know your UFO history, there have been many civilian UFO organizations, including NICAP, the National Investigative Committee of Aerial Phenomenon, that have been brought down by the CIA from the inside. So just real quick for your viewers, if they're not familiar, NICAP was really the first big civilian saucer group in the United States. It was in the 1950s. And not only was it big, this is really before the idea of UFOs was taboo to scientists. And so there were a lot of well-respected astronomers, astrophysicists who are joining this group. And the intelligence apparatus in the United States recognized it as a threat. And so they actually got a lot of their own CIA operatives in the NICAP. And then they started to work their way up the ranks and they got into these higher positions. They started to pay themselves exorbitant salaries, all on NICAP's dime. And it ended up bankrupting the organization. So there's a
I
long
always wondered
history.
what happened to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's a long history, and it's almost like a Cold War. It's been a passive aggressive history, but there's definitely an established connection between intelligence agencies in UFO groups. So I've never met Lou Elizondo. Maybe there's a chance his intentions are pure. Maybe there's a chance if you meet him, he's a great guy. But just based on his backstory, how he came onto the scene, a lot of people are very skeptical.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We've had that discussion a lot on this show with chat and then also with guests about how so many of the people coming out to talk about this are coming from the intelligence communities, which on one hand is fine. But on the other hand, we know that there's people who've come from intelligence communities before that have helped wreck the UFO community and the trustworthiness of UFO community before. One of which is I just saw in a commercial for Gaia the other day. So that was interesting that these names are still coming around, even though we know they're spreading disinformation.
That's very well stated, Frosty. Well done. I agree with that.
So top of the hour, I want to reset real quick. Welcome in. If you've joined us since the beginning, we were talking to James Krug this evening, and we were talking about, well, UFOs, space, NASA, moon landings, Apollo with Michael Schratt. We're talking about all kinds of things this evening. So if you have any questions for our guests, make sure that you put them in the chat wherever you're watching or listening to us tonight. And we will get those questions related over to our guests tonight. I do have a chat that a question that I had earlier on Facebook that I'm going to get to in a second. We'll see how we answer that one. But we're moving along so fast already. There's so much I wanted to get to, and we're already going to be running low on time. So if you have those questions, get them in. We will get those over. So the first one is Isabel over on the Spirit Realm Network Facebook stream said, I have a question. Why am I afraid of some ETs, and how can we feel or know our family versus the other one? So I think this is getting into the idea of like star seeds and stuff like that. I don't know how far down that rabbit hole you've gone down, Jim, but I know Jenny might be able to talk to that as well.
I would say, do you want to go first, Jenny?
You go, Jim. I'm interested to know to hear if you have gone down that rabbit hole, because before we started the stream, we were in our everything's not working, panic mode.
Fire.
We were talking a lot about rabbit holes, so I wanted to know, see what you got for us.
I would say definitely trust your instincts, because I think instincts are God-given. Like, I think that's a wisp of the divine and the creator. And I think our instincts, our initial instincts, always try to lead us in the right direction. And how many times when you make a poor decision in your life, you end up looking back and think, man, like, I knew I had the right idea in mind first, I went a different direction. So I think it's fairly well established. Some extraterrestrial races that are interacting here are benevolent, friendly. Some are malevolent, hostile. And then I think there are a number of them that are anywhere in between. And some could just be indifferent, which can also be perceived as hostility. They're essentially just trying to have their own agenda here. I think from everything that I've seen with MUFON, because since I submitted my resume to you, I actually got a slight promotion. I'm now the director of investigations for all of Pennsylvania MUFON, which is pretty
Nice.
cool. And I've also been a
Congratulations.
member of the MUFON's ERT team, the Experiencer Resource Team, that handles the heavier cases like the abductions. And I think for those people scared out there, every single time that people end up having an encounter where they see their family, their family, if you believe in the starseed idea, they know it just right away. And if anything, that is actually their real family. And then what they're doing here, they immediately realize is more of an illusion. But anytime that a human has an encounter with one of the more hostile species, they also end up knowing that right away. There are very, very few cases where extraterrestrials have been able to effectively trick a human or put an effective enough screen memory out there that the human doesn't realize that something's wrong. With that being said, too, just to add one more part, from my own experience, I really feel like the abduction phenomena is absolutely 100% a multi-generational phenomenon. It is exceptionally rare that you'll get a scenario like the Betty and Barney Hill story, where people just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Another civilization, whatever they needed them right now, and they just took them. That is very, very rare. In almost every ERT case where I'm talking with a witness, they initially think that an abduction, an encounter, is also just a fluke thing. But then you kind of start to just cautiously peel back the layers like an onion. And you start with a simple question like, was this your first ever UFO experience? And almost always they're like, well, come to think of it, no, when I was a little kid, I had this and this happen. And so then the next layer of the onion is, okay, has anybody else in your family also had an experience? And sometimes they say no, but more often than not, it's, well, when my mom was younger, she said this happened. And so what you end up seeing is absolutely a pattern. And whatever other civilizations are looking for, it does seem to be highly reliant on DNA and lineages. And once they find a certain lineage that has whatever it is they're looking for, they tend to stick with that lineage over and over and over. And usually when people are taken, good or bad, they recognize, they remember the situation as soon as they see it.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, that it is generational.
I mean, just about anything that I've seen has kind of leaned that way for sure. Mm-hmm.
What's your theory on why? What are they looking for?
That's a great question. What's funny is when you see people, a lot of times people will come up to you at conferences and share their stories with you. And some of them are pretty intense. And I'll be honest, conferences can be a very, very long day. And everybody wants to share their personal stories with you. And you try to be super friendly because the people paid money to be there. And you know, even if you yourself can't do anything with it, it definitely helps them. What's fascinating, though, is a certain look that a lot of the abductees have. And sure enough, a lot of the people that come up to me, definitely do look Nordic in nature. They have pale skin, a very, very high percentage of like bleach blonde, like silver type blonde hair, very light blue pupils. And this is not a genetic makeup that you really see in the United States very much. That's more like Norway, Sweden, Finland. That's where you see those type of people. But I have a disproportionately a high number of people that seem to have that. I also think they are absolutely looking for people that have, this would be up your alley, Jenny, like a more advanced psychic intuition. And there, I was just talking to my dad about this the other day. My dad was a lifelong skeptic and is kind of like reverse course and come around to the other side. But it really is a chicken or egg scenario, because a lot of these people, when they start to talk to you, they sound a little bit crazy. And like, I don't judge it anymore at all. Like, no matter what somebody says, like, I'll just listen. I'll keep an open mind. But the chicken or egg scenario is this. Is it that these people, a lot of them really are crazy and they're prone to confabulation, and so they're concocting these stories? Or is it they started out just like regular people, but they had such an intense experience and no real support group to go to, no way to process that or cope with it, and then that kind of made them appear crazy in the process? So there's definitely some of that. I also think one of the newer theories, it's probably been around, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, but it's really gained some mainstream traction. And you've even heard some Congress people start to say this, is that the extraterrestrials are not really aliens from outer space. They could very easily be future humans who are coming back. And even one of the scientists who just recently disappeared, she had disappeared a year or two ago, but she's really gained popularity. And that's the brilliant young physicist, Amy Eskridge. And a lot of her interviews are coming out. And she basically said, I forget if she called them the 46s and the 52s, but she basically said one alien group is us 46,000 years in the future. The other is us 52,000 years in the future. And some people think there's a catastrophe that happens on the Earth in the near future. And so these more advanced civilizations are coming back to essentially sample and preserve as much of the human genome as they can before this big event happens. So there's a number of ways you could go with it. And even in Congress, because you guys were talking about before the show, one of the kind of creepy things, some of the recent revelations, even President Trump and a lot of congressmen are starting to directly say, this is way more complicated than aliens from outer space. There's the potential of a demonic aspect. There's the potential that heaven and hell are absolutely real, but they are not as separated from this world as we think. There's a lot of bleed through, a lot of overlap. And so I think that's one of the possibilities. And that might be one of the real reasons that disclosure is so difficult and governments can't do it. I almost feel like if it was as easy as aliens from outer space, they'd be able to tell us that. But I think that this is working on a lot of levels that people would really, really struggle to accept.
That's a great point, because in the news article tonight, when I was reading up on the news from Representative Luna, she was also talking about how more and more the information she's getting is being referred to as extra dimensional. And so that makes a lot of sense. And to the idea that it is, I think, easier to say we have these beings who are visiting us from Zeta Epsilon, or as opposed it is to say these are extra dimensional beings. And then the question is, well, what does that mean? And maybe we don't know that yet.
Yes, you could even argue that the aliens from outer space could almost be an effective cover story used by governments to introduce people to the idea without hitting them with the really heavy stuff. Because to your point, Frosty, the extra dimensional hypothesis is a very real possibility. And it ties in really, really nicely with what physicists have talked about for years, the idea of the multiverse or the many worlds theory of time travel. Most physicists posit that if it's real, there's an infinite amount of different dimensional realities or parallel world lines. But one of the curious things is a number that I always end up seeing is like 7 or 8. Like, no, there's not an infinite amount. There are 7 or 8 parallel world lines where certain actions are slightly different. Certain parts of history have played out a little bit differently, at least for our planet. And that's where the bleed through is coming through, is these parallel timelines. And it's not just extraterrestrials, but there are also then the parallel timelines of us human beings. So I think it could be very complicated, but it could also dovetail very nicely with ideas that physicists have had for decades now.
Yeah, which could also be really interesting too, because we could be dealing with all of the above. But answer D, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you could have the spiritual aspect. You could have physical aliens from outer space. You could have multidimensional extraterrestrials. You could have the spiritual heaven hell aspect. Even I think it was Matt Getz came out the other day, and I can't believe he actually said this, but
Yeah.
he did. He was in an interview, and I could not believe what he said, but he said that he had been briefed on a number of U.S. underground military bases, which deep underground military bases, we've had those for decades. We have known with almost certainty that there are extraterrestrial aspects going on. And Getz said that he was basically briefed on at least 8 human extraterrestrial hybridization programs that are going on in these bases as we speak. And I was just shocked that he actually said it, because that's the type of leak that would normally get a person killed or definitely put their life in danger. And so on top of everything else, a common theme of abductions, if you read certain books about it, like Whitley Strieber's Communion is definitely a classic one. The Watchers is about the Betty Andreasson abduction, is really a big one. And so one of the big themes is another civilization is desperately trying to merge our species with theirs. One of the ideas is their bodies, their genome got too wrecked by an environmental disaster that happened. Or another idea, which I think is more likely, is that civilization doesn't actually have souls. And for whatever reason, we do. And a lot of more advanced civilizations are both flabbergasted and somewhat jealous that a species as primitive as ours has souls, because it seems like these are, for whatever reason, reserved for the most advanced species out there in the cosmos. And so it seems like they're desperately trying to merge our genome with theirs to try to get a hold of our souls so that they can have souls too. So you're exactly right, Frosty. There are so many possibilities out there. And as you said, it could be a mix of all of them.
There's a lot of theories, a lot of new theories that you just said I never heard of before.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Well, you know, the whole thing with Gates coming out and talking about the hybrid breeding programs, I had the similar response to you. I think I brought it up on the Witching Hours a couple of weeks ago. And I talked to Jenny about it, I think even before the show. And I was like, what are we supposed to do with that information? You know, especially like you say, coming from an older generation. I mean, I you know, like I started really kind of following this stuff in the mid to late 90s, you know, coast to coast AM kind of time frame there. And that information just didn't come out. Like never in a million years would someone in the government ever even, like you talked about at the beginning of the program, they would have got laughed out of their job if they said an alien hybrid breeding program. And now it just nonchalantly kind of gets thrown out. And I don't know what we're supposed to do with that information, to be honest.
And I think there's a chance, like I haven't been the hugest Matt Gaetz fan, but there is a chance that he was trying to warn us, because one of the other things that he added, and again, I'm blown away that either he was allowed to say this or he just said the heck with it and he went rogue. But he said there are already people in our society, in our governments, who are these hybrids. And he said, you would be blown away by who these people were. And so that gets us into kind of a side shoot where over the last couple of years, with sharing of information on social media and YouTube with like-minded people, a lot of people really believe that they are catching human beings shape-shifting to their true reptilian form. And this idea has been out there for a while, but the mass of video evidence that's out there now of politicians, celebrities, athletes, they're giving an interview, everything looks fine, and then for a couple of split seconds, their circular pupils will go slit and cat-like. Or there are times that their faces will actually change and their throat will start to pulse like an amphibian breathing. Or you'll temporarily see scales appear on their face and they get a very pronounced brow. Or their teeth will end up turning into what look like little spikes. Now, the skeptical explanation is that's just TV buffering, that not all the information is transferring over and that you're getting a delay to pixels. Or the white teeth are often explained away because they'll say there's a big contrast between the black shadow in your mouth and the actual white teeth, and it can bleed over and it can make your teeth look like different shapes. So skeptics will say, forget about it. Oops, there's nothing actually to it. But believers are saying, no, this is actually happening, and it's part of the way that they're keeping control over the entire human population is you have these shapeshifters working their way up through. And I do just want to throw out, if any of your listeners are thinking, okay, this guy's totally jumped the rails now, I can't buy into this. It's actually a story as old as time. It's not a new conspiracy, but in the holy books of India, the Vedic texts, the Vedas, there is a very, very open extraterrestrial storyline throughout them. And the Vedas are about 10 times longer than the Holy Bible, and they're thousands of years older. And the overall story arc is negative, shape-shifting extraterrestrials came here to Earth, took on the form of human beings, and started to work their way up through governments. And just before they totally enslaved the population, positive extraterrestrials intervened. There was a huge throwdown in the skies over Earth in their airships called Vimanas, and the negative extraterrestrials were vanquished. And so when I see that stuff being shared online today, there's so much of it. And I think it would be very, very difficult to be able to actually fake all of it. Like, just for a quick example, the standard frame rate for film is 24 frames per second. So understand, for somebody to take a regular video, let's say somebody's like, you know what? I'm going to take this celebrity's pupils and I'm going to change them and make them go slit. And then I'm going to post it so people think they're a reptilian. If you have even a 2-second clip of a celebrity, that means somebody's got to painstakingly sit there and edit 48 frames of that and not have any mistakes or anything like that, just to be able to actually get that to work. And so I think there is some credibility to it. There's too much of it out there to ignore. Our oldest cultures have been telling us the same story. And so then when Matt Gaetz came out and he said that, I think to myself, okay, this is really the actual firsthand validation that we need. That's not just coming from like an alien abductee, but from somebody in the know. And is he trying to warn us that that's happening right now? So I've really thought quite a lot about that quote, that interview, since he's made it.
Very interesting. Well, once again, we're getting close to the end of the show. There's a couple of things I wanted to ask real quick that I've been dying to ask. And that's that over time, it seems like people see different kinds of unidentified objects in the sky. I remember back around, maybe like the late 2007 time, 2008. I feel like there was a huge rash of like orange orbs that were being seen all the time, which my sister saw actually, and called me on the road, was freaked out. I just had these orange orbs just fly over the top of my car going at like this unimaginable rate of speed. And I was like, well, people are seeing that right now. What kinds of things are people seeing now? What are some of the most popular kind of UFO sightings that we're having be seen through MUFON?
Oh, that's a great question. It's difficult for me to give a direct correlation through MUFON, and I'm not trying to hide anything. we still really see a scattered amount of many, many different types. But orbs are up there. A common misidentification for orbs are Chinese lanterns. One time, probably about 2 years ago, I got into not a fight, but a little heated disagreement with a UFO
You've had a
witness.
lot of stories about
I
it.
know, right? I know. And so I was interviewing this witness, and I took the case. I was state section director, and I assigned it to myself because it came from the Lake Racetown area in Pennsylvania, where my family and I frequent. And he said, the witness said he was watching fireworks down there, and he had seen a number of orange orbs. And so I'm taking a story and I'm listening to it. And unbeknownst to the witness, I happened to be at that same firework event that night. And I know at Lake Racetown, after fireworks every year for 4th of July, people set off Chinese lanterns. And they can not only look mysterious, but if people set off 3 at a time, right away your brain tries to triangulate it and think, okay, I've just seen a triangular UFO. And so we get a lot of orange orbs from Chinese lanterns and from drones. But to your point, I do think a lot of them are also valid. And I also think they're happening for a very strange reason that a lot of people might not. I think there's a good chance orange orbs aren't all necessarily like physical nuts and bolts crafts, but I think it's a real chance that it's other civilizations that are remote viewing us. So, Jenny, with your background, are you fairly familiar with remote viewing?
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent. So I've read a lot of books on it. A decent one is by Jim Mars. It's called Sci-Spies, but I think hands down the best remote viewing book ever is by Dr. Courtney Brown. It's called Cosmic Voyage. And he did do a sequel, a follow-up that's called Cosmic Explorers. It's not nearly as good. So if you're only ever going to read one, I would read Cosmic Voyage by Dr. Courtney Brown. And in the book, when they talked about U.S. remote viewers, remote viewing locations that the Soviet remote viewers were also looking at the same time, when they saw the other ones there, they each looked like orbs while they were remote viewing. They didn't look like physical bodies. They looked like actual orbs. So I think there's a chance the orbs are happening due to remote viewing. Another type of UFO, Frosty, that I would say is newer, but they've been around since at least the 1990, and that's the triangular shaped UFO with the light at each point, one in the center. We've seen them ever since the Belgium flap in 1990 when a bunch were spotted over Belgium. But last thing, just to kind of muddy the waters, we certainly can't be sure that all of these are extraterrestrial spacecraft anymore. There's certainly a chance a lot of the triangular UFOs are the now infamous TR-3B, which is supposedly the first United States anti-gravity spaceship. So I do think a lot of the new shapes that we're seeing, there's a very good chance it's actually our technology and not alien.
Excellent. We had a question here from CMC Air Boss. What about white and highly reflective orbs? Any difference there?
I would say no real difference. Usually, if you're lucky enough to see one during the daytime, that tends to be a daytime versus nighttime issue. If you see it during the daytime, you're going to be less likely to pick up on the glow. You're going to be more likely to be able to see the actual natural surface of it. Whereas at night, you're going to see more of a glow. One wild card in the mix are definitely the SpaceX Starlink satellites.
Yes.
They are so common that if you actually go to report a UFO to MUFON, MUFON has a disclaimer right on their website. Before you report it, please check Starlink satellite data. And SpaceX has actually tried better to reduce their reflectivity. I actually know somebody at SpaceX, was pretty cool. The newer Starlinks are essentially being painted black, but when the solar panels are still angled right, you can still get a really, really bright reflection, but the older ones were a lot more reflective. So as far as I can tell, no real difference between white orbs or dark orbs that I know of.
Yeah. My son had caught on video one time. He didn't know what it was, and it was Starlink satellites coming over. And if you didn't know any better, you would think we were being invaded, for sure.
Yeah, they're amazing.
One last comment we had over on Spirit Realm Network on Facebook. We're talking about the Anunnaki and that there was a connection with the Anunnaki aliens and the lizards.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm actually reading Zachariah Sitchin's The 12th Planet right now, which is a really, really heavy book, but it's all about that. That's a tough one, only because if you actually read descriptions of the Anunnaki that the Sumerians left us, they absolutely seem to have the appearance of humans. Their proportions are just much, much larger, like giants. Personally, I have not seen a direct connection with Anunnaki and reptilians. I do think the reptilians are not only very real, but I think that there's a very good chance that they fall into what people usually dub the native Terran hypothesis. And so the idea for those unfamiliar is we are essentially the extraterrestrials who were brought here. So not all of the dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago at the comet impact off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Some survived. They already had tens of millions of years head start on us. They continue to evolve. And one of the neat little tidbits on it, it's tough to find online, but I've saved it, is I believe it was the Toronto or Canadian Museum of Science in Toronto back in the 90s actually had a very short-lived exhibit on what would dinosaurs be like now if they never went extinct. And it was fascinating. They actually showed them being bipedal, walking upright, wearing loincloths, clothes, holding spears, holding implements, and looking very, very similar to what reptilians look like today. And interestingly, the display was brand new. It was only up for like a month or two until the whole thing got taken down and it was never seen again. And the only reason that we even have it now is because tourists to the museum took pictures at the time and had the wherewithal to save it. And so I do think, totally inadvertently, I think that museum in Canada stumbled onto a very, very real truth. So it's a good question, Frosty. Everything I've read, I think they are two separate things. My guess is reptilians were already here as the native Terrans. The Anunnakis were the ones who came down and helped bring modern civilization here. So I would say, if anything, the two might be at odds with each other.
All right. Well, that brings us down past
Already at the end.
Already at the
Wow.
end.
That went fast.
Would you like to do you have anything that you'd like to pass along as far as where people can find you or any events that you're gonna that you have coming up?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, I actually am speaking at the Eric Mintel Paranormal Conference outside of Philadelphia, and that is, save the date now, it is on Sunday, October 4th, 2026. And so he does a really, really good job with these. They're very professional. They're very, very positive. And so that's my next speaking engagement. But I'm a frequent presenter at MUFON conferences. And I've also gotten to the point where if you go to MUFON's YouTube channel, you can find a number of my videos. MUFON's actually been taking my videos, editing them, and posting them. So they do a really nice job. And if anybody's in central Pennsylvania, I do public sky shows at the Neil Armstrong Planetarium throughout the school year. And then in the summer, I founded an observatory out at a local Revolutionary War site called the Mount Lion Observatory at Fort Roberdeau. And so we do public sky watches there all summer long.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, it was super awesome having you on. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Keisha
Yeah,
said,
thank you for
gotta
having
have
me.
you back. And I think that I agree because I think we could talk about a lot more things.
Yes, I hope that my answers for some of those questions weren't too long-winded. Like when it started, I kind of thought, boy, how are we going to kill this much time?
No.
But then I thought, oh my gosh, it went so fast. So I hope that those answers weren't too detailed for you.
No.
Always goes
That's
fast.
exactly the way we like it. So we're just excited to be able to talk, and hopefully we get to talk more. I think we should probably just maybe skip the raid tonight and just have an end, Jenny. What do you think?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Do we have any things to read off over here real quick, Jimmy?
I don't think it's going to show me.
Oh, it doesn't show you.
No.
Okay. Sorry about that. Well, we'll hit them next week. Thank you for any follows, subs, any of that tonight. We always appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and hanging out with us. We will be back next week. Are you streaming this week, Jenny? We got Thursday.
I should be, but things are always changing.
This has been a weird week, so
we've had
we'll
a
see
rough
what's
week,
going
guys.
on.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Take care. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you all next time.
Bye.